should. Oh, I'm just going to say okay to record for Alex. For centuries, people have listened to this 23rd Psalm that I'm going to share with you shortly in various translations. And as Sue has already said, we've been given the theme of finding wholeness. Tonight, I have 3 stories to share with you relating to this psalm. But before we go there, let's read it. I hope you can listen with your spiritual ears open, as already Sue has mentioned. Hear it anew, because sometimes we think we know something so well, we forget to let it speak to us again. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pasture. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This psalm is one of, if not the best known and best loved passages in all of the scriptures. It's been brought to bear to offer comfort and strength to those in the battlefield, in a hospital, at a graveside, to people going through almost any other kind of trial imaginable. The psalm, of course, is written by David, who wrote so many of our psalms, a young man. And David was a shepherd. And so this psalm, this song, was using the analogy from something he already knew. I don't know how many of you have sheep, but sheep are very interesting animals. From what I've read and what I've learned about them, sheep have no sense of direction. They're easily lost. They have no effective means of defense. They're easily frightened, and they can paralyze the sheep or make them run. And they're dirty. They have a poor sense of smell, and so cannot easily find food or water. These facts make this analogy between us and sheep pretty striking. We too are helpless without our shepherd. Well, I know I am. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. The first line sums up the entire psalm, really. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all I need. Or some versions say, I shall not want, which doesn't mean we don't want the Lord. It means that we have everything we need when we have that relationship. Think about the profound nature of that simple statement. In John 10, Jesus told us that he is the good shepherd, and he lays down his life for his sheep. He said he knows his sheep, and his sheep know him. The picture of Jesus as a shepherd is well established. First story. Some of you may have heard this before. I recall sharing it in an AWOL service, but I love it, and I use it quite often, really, because of what it says. It's a wonderful story about a dinner party. We all like a good dinner party. And at this dinner party, gathered in a room were all sorts of people from all different ages and experiences. And the host at the end of the meal invited someone in their midst to recite the 23rd Psalm. He actually was a well-known actor. And those in attendance knew that this fellow, he actually quoted and read biblical passages in concert. So they were expecting big things. And he had this wonderful, brilliant voice. His timing, his intonation was perfect. And he recited the 23rd Psalm that night with great applause, and people were just appreciating what he had done. Then they went around the room and they asked others if they would like to share something. And over in the corner was an older woman, and she sat quietly, and she happened to be the aunt of the host. She was staying with him, and she hadn't really heard everything going on because she was hard of hearing. So they asked her, would she like to recite something? She stood up and started to recite, guess what? The 23rd Psalm. People at first were a little bit embarrassed. There was this awkward sort of situation to have her recite the same psalm that the great actor had already referred to and spoken so brilliantly. Before she finished, people were caught up, though, in her recitation. Some began to cry, to weep. And later somebody said to the actor, why? Why was her reading so moving when she didn't have any of the skills that he had as an actor? And he said, it's because I know the psalm, but she knows the shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I am the good shepherd, he says. I know my own and my own know me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Do you know the shepherd? Have you found him to be good? Have you discovered he is all you need? The second story is a story I read actually about a pastor who was in a very bad car accident. And in recovery, which went on for quite a long time, he made it a spiritual practice that every day he would read the 23rd Psalm. Now he knew it well. He'd read it, he'd preached it, he dwelt in it, and yet each day he faithfully reread it. In his testimony, he said God revealed new thoughts, new insights, new comfort, and whom he could trust that he'd never considered before. And he found healing and he felt wholeness as he read and reread it. He sensed the good Lord calling his name. I love singing, I have called you by your name, you are mine. I have a testimony of that hymn, which some of you will know, but it really ministered to me in a time when I needed it, when I got a message with just the lyrics or part of the lyrics when I needed to hear it most, and it really, really strengthened me. So thank you, Sue, or whomever chose it tonight. It's such a personal hymn. The sweetest sound to our ear is the sound of our name. It's the hunger of the human heart to know and to be known, to be recognized, to be called by name. I think in a spirit of confession, I'm getting worse at calling people by their names. So many people in the community where I live know my name and call me by it because they recognize me from some service or another. I can recognize a face, but not always be able to call them their name. And people make excuses for me and say, well, I guess you see so many people in your line of work, it's understandable. But others will say, do you remember me? And I stumble through and try and work out where and how I know them. But the Good Shepherd knows their name and your name and my name and calls us beloved. Listen to that inner voice which says, I have called you by your name from the very beginning. You are mine and I am yours. You are my beloved, and on you my favor rests. I have molded you in the depths of the earth and knitted you together in your mother's womb. I have carved you in the palms of my hands and hidden you in the shadow of my embrace. Wherever you go, I will go. He knows our name. That's from another psalm that I love so much, 139. When do we receive real comfort and consolation? Is it when someone teaches us how to think or to act? Is it when we receive advice about where to go and kind of what to do? Is it when we hear words of reassurance and hope? Perhaps. But what really counts is in the moments in our sometimes pain and suffering, that someone just stays with us, stays right by our side. And more important than any particular action or word or advice is a simple presence that someone cares. Which leads me to my third story. I recall the day my stepmother died. She'd been my stepmother for 25 years. And she didn't like the word stepmother, and I didn't really. She was like a second mother. She was beautiful and a wonderful grandparent to our children. We had a call in the morning to say that things were pretty grim. They weren't going well. It was Easter Saturday. And I had this little baby to bless in Tuncurry in the church. And then when that was done, we got in the car and we made our way to Port Macquarie, where she was in hospital. We wanted to see her and to support my dad and our grandfather. When we got there to the hospital, in the corner as we went in the entry was a lonely figure of my dad to say that Hazel had died. devastation, sadness. We hadn't been able to be there in time to say our farewells, and there were a million emotions. After some time of sitting by her bedside, holding her hand, a lovely lady, the hospital chaplain, came in, and you would have thought we were the only people she could or had to spend time with that day. She was so gentle. She was compassionate. She was warm. And she was really like the Christ to us in that moment. She turned to her Bible and she opened it up. And you guessed it. She read to us the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. And yea, though I walk through the valley of death, I will fear no evil. For my rod and my staff, they comfort me. I knew the psalm by heart. I'd read it a million times, perhaps. I'd spoken it, I'd shared it. But in that moment, it brought me the assurance and more comfort than I'd ever known before. The Lord was my shepherd, my dad's shepherd, Hazel's shepherd, your shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, he's all I need. The Lord is my shepherd, I'm confident his goodness will lead me home. If you were to imagine your life as whole, complete, what would it look like? What would it mean for you? And what keeps that from happening? Is anything missing or been lost? What would it take for you to feel a bit more wholehearted? Because I think we all want wholeness and completeness in our lives. I believe that's also God's desire for us. It's what Jesus was getting at when he said, I come that they might have life and have it abundantly. The longing and desire for wholeness and completeness is revealed so many places in our scriptures. But for a moment, I want to reflect about a H-O-L-E in our soul, not a W-H-O-L-E in the soul. I think, well, I know I have. I've thought so many times about the hole we carry in our soul, H-O-L-E, this yearning within us for many things. But the hole in soul I want to talk about is the yearning for God. And so often when you yearn for God, you find that God is yearning for you. Sometimes we try and fill that hole with all sorts of things, be it our work, our relationships, artificial substances, music. I did put in exercise and I thought, well, Wendy, that's a downright lie because I don't think I've ever tried to fill that hole with exercise. But you know what I mean, so many things. But nothing manages to bring wholeness and completeness and oneness. Like you feel like you're in a relationship with God and God's only begotten Son, Jesus. I know in my life when I've faced pain, loss, I've been disillusioned, I've had disappointment, I've been hurt, I've had more questions than answers. The awareness that the one who is my shepherd, the one who knows my name, who calls my name, that's my strength. That's my hope. That's who I put my trust in. That helps me feel whole. So my question for us all tonight, well, the question is, do you and I, do we know the psalm or do we know the shepherd? I pray it's both. And in knowing that comes blessing and completeness. May God bless you all, each of you, all of you abundantly as you share with one another, as you share with others. May you recognize the voice of the Good Shepherd as he calls your name. And may the spirit of love and peace bless you this day, this night, and every day and every night. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Wendy. And I'm so glad we got